Hello, I'm Dr. Jack Audet. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Overlook Medical Center, and I'm pleased today to be joined by one of my dear colleagues, Dr. Fred Cerrone, who is the Medical Director of the Atlantic Health System COVID Recovery Center. So, Fred,
Thank you.
welcome
Thank you,
to
Jack.
HGTV. What I thought might be worthwhile for the audience is if we could, we're going to be talking about COVID long haulers today, and I thought before we really got into that, it might be worthwhile just to discuss what some of the symptoms of acute COVID infection are, because there is some variety in the symptoms.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. There is a lot of variety, right? It's not one single thing. So, in the beginning, way back, March 2020, a lot of respiratory, a lot of cardiac issues. People couldn't breathe. My heart's racing, fever, chills, and we still see a lot of that. But as the variants come and go, we see some changes. And it can be everything from, I just have a stuffy nose, a little bit of a sore throat, to full-blown, again, fever, chills, achy, not feeling well, all those things you hear about and read about. So, and the more we see, the more we learn, right? And we're still learning. So with this, so more recently, those sinus symptoms, again, the stuffiness, a lot of that. Some people, stomach, GI kind of issues. Some people, it's odd, my hair's falling out. Some people have rashes. So it is not one disease or one kind of presentation, you have to think about it, especially these days, right? So it's been a real learning curve for us.
Thank you. So our patients get beyond their initial infection, and the symptoms seem to continue, and we end up with more of a chronic type of a state, and we've termed those patients being long haulers in terms of their COVID. So I'm wondering if you would describe where is that point where you start describing a patient as being a long hauler, and what type of symptoms you're seeing with them.
So the long haulers are basically those patients who still suffer with symptoms more than 30 days after their initial symptoms. So, and that's quite a few people, unfortunately, but they estimate maybe 10% or more of the COVID infection can lead to these long haulers. So over about a year ago, Atlantic decided that we need to help these people, right? That this was way back. Actually, I take that back. Summer of 2020, right? We're on COVID time. It gets a little distorted, and that we started noticing that these patients were having persistent symptoms, a lot of them, and with a myriad of symptoms. Not a classic, what have you. Everybody the same thing, and they decided, well, we should be helping our patients, right? I mean, we have a lot of patients in our area to take care of, a lot of patients in the region to take care of. How can we help them? So that's when we were approached about the Atlantic COVID Recovery Center and setting that up. And so, these patients were presenting with, again, shortness of breath, these persistent palpitations, heart racing, and the brain fog. A lot of that you keep reading about and hearing about it, but it's real. It's not. And what we were finding out is these poor patients thought that they were imagining these things, and they were left out there alone to kind of suffer through these symptoms. And like nobody was helping them, right? It was like, I mean, they were hearing things like, unfortunately, like, oh, you just imagine it, even being told, hey, you're crazy, that's not real, these symptoms you're having. But they were real, and they are real still, and we're still seeing them, right? But that brain fog, the shortness of breath, the tachycardia, the main things that we saw and we're still seeing a year later with these patients. So what we decided to do was, when we looked at this, as pulmonary lung physicians, we were seeing a lot of this, obviously, right? I mean, a lot of these patients in the beginning, a lot of lung symptoms. But then we said, that doesn't make sense the way we're doing. These patients we need to look at the whole patient. We need to take a more holistic approach to these people. They need to come somewhere where they can get the proper care, they can navigate the healthcare system, and realize mainly that they're not crazy, that this is a real thing, and we'll try to help you. Now remember, a year is a long time, but even October 2020, when we started, we didn't know a lot about this, and we're still, again, as I mentioned earlier, and you'll hear me keep saying this, we're still learning about this, right? But at least they had a place to go where they were told, look, we can help you. And we set it up where we look at the whole patient, and if they need Brain fog, all right, we'll get them that help. Of course, a lot of anxiety and depression. Our behavioral health colleagues have been great with peer support groups and setting that up. Cardiology, okay, heart problems, we'll help you with that. But just coming somewhere where they were told, hey, we're going to try to help you, it goes, that went a long way and still goes a long way with these patients. So it's been a great experience. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it with these patients, and they're really appreciative of that someone's helping them.
I think that's a great point for everyone is that just the validation of the patient of the symptoms that they're experiencing is very powerful.
Yep, that's
And
correct.
so with your proviso that we're still learning, my next question admittedly is a little bit unfair, but we'll invite you to speculate regardless.
Yeah.
And what strikes me with these symptoms of the long haul is that there is such a variety of them. You'll have cardiac symptoms, you'll have respiratory symptoms, and I've really been struck by what I've heard about the neurological symptoms. And I'm trying to envision the scientist within me as, what is the explanation? What's the etiology for these symptoms that are hitting multiple organ systems?
Yeah, so I guess if I could answer that question, I'd win the Nobel Prize. But it's we don't know. Is it a chronic inflammatory disorder? Is it something like chronic fatigue syndrome? Where they have these. Is it affecting? But can affect every organ. It can affect all parts of your body. So we still don't know. What we are learning are there's some, for lack of a better term, some phenotypes which we're starting to group, so okay, some more of this upper respiratory sinus kind of thing, some more of the GI kind of thing, some more of this these skin rashes, other things, what we call mast cell issues, not to get too scientific, but so we're trying to break them down, and something near and dear to my heart, as you know, a lot of sleep problems.
Right.
As you know, I deal with a lot of the sleep issues. So, but just that fatigue factor. So we're trying to break it down and see, if we can improve some of these symptoms, just some improving those symptoms, the patients feel better. That also goes a long way. But I wish I had an answer for you on that question, but I
Well,
don't.
the Nobel Prize is not forthcoming.
Not this year, no.
No, okay. Well, then the other question I'd have for you is given the variety of symptoms we have, there's probably a variety of medical approaches that you use in terms of your treatments.
Yeah.
So what are some of the kinds of things that you're doing?
So I think it goes back to this breaking it down. So, they come to us and we do a full assessment of them, not just, again, we are in our office mainly pulmonary physicians, but we're looking at the whole patient, right? So, you know, ag- again, it's what do they need? Again, if a lot of it is behavioral, kind of that anxiety, depression, which is understandable. Again, we help them get that help. Um, if they have respiratory symptoms, breathing problems, we help them, right? I mean, sometimes it's asthma-like conditions, sometimes it's not, but we try to help them. Our cardiology colleagues have been great, with this, with helping us trying to sort this out, and they've uncovered a lot of. It's interesting. A lot of these people have underlying problems they didn't know about, right? So we're just uncovering those problems and helping them, and that's a great satisfaction to help them at least things that would have bothered them later on, we found earlier. So I think that what I'm trying to say is that each person's different, right? So they come in, they're an individual, and we approach them as an individual. We don't approach this as you have COVID, there's one answer to this. We say, okay, what's your issues? And we'll help you with your individual issues. So it depends. I can't give you that there's one answer to everything. We assess them and we just break it down, and that's what we help you with or help them with.
So I would imagine that at the Recovery Center, you've got a multidisciplinary team. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit in terms of who your team members are and how you work together, what that looks like.
Yeah, so you need a great team to get this done, right? So we have obviously our own physicians who assess the patient, but before that, they're calling in and we have a navigator who speaks to them, a coordinator. And basically, they're going through, a lot of them, especially more so in the beginning, but even now, just want to talk, right? They just want to, again, that validation. So the coordinator does a great job of helping them, just talking to them and helping assess them. And then they schedule an appointment with us, and we have, again, a great team of certified medical assistants, patient care techs who help the patients, and they're all great with the patients. And then we have our other colleagues, specialties that help us. We have our, as I mentioned, the behavioral health team, who's been great. They've set up peer support groups as well as individual needs for the patient. We have our cardiologist, our neurologist, any specialty that's needed, we've done, we have. And the people who are doing it are committed to seeing these patients quickly. We don't want them to come back in 2 months, say, oh, you have an appointment in 2 months. No, they'll get seen within a week and be assessed, and we try to help them. And I got to say, it's been a real effort. The administration's been great about supporting this, about, giving us all the resources that we need to help these patients as well, which is, as you well know, very, very important for the care of the patient. So it's really been a team effort, and it's been, again, it's great to see that, it's great to see everybody coming together just to help them.
So how many patients are you following in the recovery center now?
Yeah, so we started about the end of October 2020, had to think about that. And right now we have 825 patients, which is one of the largest centers between the tri-state area. And a lot of those were patients. Now remember, we also in the beginning, you might recall back in the beginning that a lot of the patients' testing was a little bit, for lack of a better term,
It's challenging.
challenging, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, so we also took the patients in the beginning who, may have tested negative, but, if it looks like COVID and smells like COVID, then it's
Probably is.
COVID. So we took all those patients as well. And we continue, obviously, to see the long haulers now. But we've had patients who, in the beginning, had symptoms for 6 months before anybody would see them. And one of the other interesting points about these patients was, you say, oh, these patients were really sick, and, then these symptoms persisted. No. Just like you read about, if you really read the proper scientific articles, is that these patients, most of them weren't in the hospital. They had mild symptoms, but then months later, and we're still seeing that, started developing some of these symptoms like, I can't breathe, or my heart's racing. Yeah. So, and one of the other things we set up is that, for those patients who were really sick in the ICU, Dr. Souza, who couldn't be here today, my co-medical director, he set up a post-intensive care clinic for those patients because there are different issues with them.
Yes.
And proud to say, the only one in New Jersey that does post-intensive care clinic, not just for COVID patients, but other ICU patients. So we take care of them. But yeah, most of the patients, and again, the articles, all the scientific articles support this, were not hospitalized.
Interesting. So how do most patients end up actually being seen in the clinic? Are they referring themselves, or they have a primary care doctor sending them in?
Yeah, so all the above. So they can refer themselves. Obviously, some of these patients we had seen from the lung standpoint, but kind of reassessing them again from a whole patient, looking at the whole system. But they've self-referred in. They've come from, obviously primary care, other specialists, and then they come to this central place where we assess, again, start the assessment and take it from there.
Yeah. You made this comment earlier in regards to an analogy or comparison to chronic fatigue syndrome, and that's one of the things that's really struck me as I reviewed the literature is the patients, particularly with the neurological symptoms that are really sort of tough to put your finger on exactly what is what. This would be chronic fatigue, so-called chronic Lyme disease as well. Any thoughts in regards to how these things potentially may relate in some capacity? Because these symptoms are very, very real to the patients.
Oh, no, they're real. And the fatigue especially, that's one of the main persistent symptoms that we see. But again, I think what we found is we don't know what ties it all together, but we do know that some of that didn't have to do with COVID. That, again, we found underlying problems that we could help them with. But for the ones who do have that persistent fatigue, everybody wants to say, oh, is it an inflammatory disorder? Is it, is it what's going on? But, that's where the research is right now, right? And that's, I think the NIH now is supporting large studies to try to answer your question not that I'm avoiding it, but trying
No,
to truly answer this
right.
question of what
What
ties
is
this
this?
together. Can
Yeah.
we tie this together? Yeah.
So we've got a new wrinkle in things these days, and that's the introduction of the Omicron variant. And again, it's a little bit early in terms of the course of things, but what are your thoughts as an expert here?
So I think I think basically you're going to see variants, right? We all knew that you were going to start seeing the variants. The only question is how sick would they make people? How severe are these variants? I think it's kind of early, right? We've known about it for has it even been 2 weeks yet? So but the initial indications are, but you see, I hate to use the term that the symptoms won't be so bad, but you see it every day in the hospital who's getting admitted. Delta is still the dominant thing that we see in causing hospitalizations. I think it's too early to tell, but I think you're just going to keep seeing variants, right? I mean, we see that with the flu, with
Yeah.
influenza. It's only how virulent or how sick will they make people? Only time's going to tell. So, I think it's just the timing of it around the holidays, which we all expected a bump, hopefully not a surge, a bump in cases. I think it just kind of came together. But I think it's a little early to say, oh, it's going to be Delta again, or it's going to be, I mean, look, we all read the same
Right,
science,
absolutely. We certainly do. Yeah.
so
It's interesting right now that in New Jersey, at least, it's still
yeah.
99.99% Delta is really what we're seeing when we're testing the COVID virus. You really have to sort of wonder, as you think about past experience we've had with past pandemics or epidemics, that you see that mutational variation over time, and it seems that you can end up with viruses that generally are more transmissible, but as they become more transmissible, they seem to be less virulent. And you have to speculate whether this might be one of the things that's going to help us get through this as an Omicron variant becomes more predominant, doesn't make people quite as sick.
Well, yeah, right.
Speculation.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
simply, right, if something's very
right.
virulent, makes you really sick, it's not going to be transmissible because patients will die. I hate to say that, right? But something that's transmissible and passes on and on tends to be make you less sick, and that's why we can transmit it on and on, right? How many asymptomatic people have passed this on? We don't know, right? We don't have that answer. How many people are walking around now with it? We don't know. But yeah, and that's part of the solution, right? That
That it
more
is.
people exposed to it, or
Yeah.
then we
But
think. We think.
right. So you had mentioned this earlier that the weather's getting cold, the holidays are coming, people are more indoors, and we have occasions to get together with our families.
Yeah.
So what would be, because I get this question asked of me all the time, is what is my best advice during these COVID times?
Look, I don't think you need to be an expert, right, on this. I mean, I really do think the vaccine helps, the boosters help, and masking up helps, and washing your hands help. We know that. I mean, everybody says, well, the flu season was really light last year. Well, okay, we all had masks, we're all washing our hands, everything we used to say about how to prevent the flu. Um, and same thing here. It's still just common sense, everything everybody's been preaching for the last almost 2 years about distancing and just be smart about it, just be smart. And that's what we just have to do, keep doing.
That's one of the points that I've been making is that with the light flu season that we had last year, there's a lot less immunity to influenza out in the community. So with that, it makes me a little bit nervous about what we're going to be seeing this year. So I've been always, when talking about COVID vaccines, I'm always careful to remind everyone that you really should get your flu vaccine as well, because that can make you pretty ill.
No, you're absolutely
I'm
right.
preaching to the choir on this one.
No, yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right though, and we should, yeah, reiterate that yeah, it's not just COVID. You still should get your flu shots. Absolutely, the best prevention against the flu, right, is the flu shot, and again, with the mask, but washing your hands and being smart about it. That's all.
So we'll give you the final word on this today, Fred. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's been quite a ride. And it's like a little bit of a roller coaster, I think, going up and down. But we're learning more and more. I think about this. I think we have a much better handle now. At least we have some treatment that are helping people, whether it's the antibodies or, for certain patients or for certain patients, steroids or antivirals. So we're getting ahead of it, but we just need to be vigilant. We're not out of it yet, and we just have to continue. It's difficult. Listen, we all know it's difficult, right? Every day dealing with this, but as long as we keep at it, we'll be okay. And one day we will, you know, hopefully be, and I think we will be unmasked, having these conversations, and talking about something in the past. We remember the day when, right? That's
No,
what all. That's all we're striving for and hoping for. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I mean, it's really very humbling when I think about what we knew a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and really impressive in terms of how far we've come during that time. So I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's great to see everyone collaborating, not just in New Jersey, not just the United States, but the world, just collaborating and okay, let's just beat it. Let's just do this. And that's what they're doing. And it's a lot different. COVID today is a lot different than it was 18 months ago. A lot different.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So,
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone in the audience today. Hopefully you found this interesting and informative. And make certain you follow that great advice from Dr. Cerrone. I want to thank him for being willing to provide this interview today. Thank you all.